Hi, my name is Renu Mehandru and I'm an admissions coach, which means that I actually assist students in getting into foreign universities for their higher education. I'm a Delhiite, born, buttered and raised in Delhi, and I'm very excited today because I have the Unspoken team with me here. And I'd like to introduce Sonam to you, who will be doing a sketch of my life's journey. Welcome, Sonam. I was actually born and raised in a very middle class and traditional family. I belong to Delhi, as I said before, and I schooled at the Convent of Jesus and Mary in Delhi, which is actually one of the prime institutions. And it was a very normal, routine, upbringing that I had. But in our family, somehow there was a lot of emphasis that was always placed on education. So that was the reason my parents actually put me in one of the top schools there. And once when I was in school, I think I was in the 10th grade or the 11th grade, and there happened to be a exchange program between the US and India, and there were some representatives from a US school who were visiting my school, and they were looking for a child ambassador. So they had this little general knowledge exam that they were conducting, and I just went and sat for the exam, and somehow I qualified, and I was offered to go to the US as a child ambassador. But I was all of 15, probably 14, I don't even remember at that time. And I didn't bring it up with my parents because I knew the kind of traditional family that I belonged to. And being a girl child, my parents would never send me to the US. So that was one thing which had a major, probably, it was a small spark which ignited in me about going overseas. I think as a child, I don't know, I think this factor that I just told you about the opportunity to go overseas, probably this was something that led to a dream that I saw, that I wanted to go overseas for my higher education. That was a dream probably. But somehow it died a very early death at that point. I didn't realize it was a dream. It was only much later, 20, 30 years later, that I realized that this was a dream of mine. My marriage actually did not change me very much as a person, because I think, like people generally say, I married my best friend. So he was more of a friend even after marriage, and he continued to be a friend. And there was a lot of synergy in our thoughts. And I think the kind of value that my family and I had for education, I think my husband also had the same value for education. I mean, education always came first to us. And I'm so happy that the person I married also, I mean, we always put money on the backbench and we always put education in front. So my husband had the same values for education. So actually, marriage did not change me very much. That's an interesting question. first my BA honors was, I went to Delhi University, I went to Miranda House. It was a very standard thing that every girl did, you go to a good school, you go to college, and then you get married. So till then, it was a very stereotype kind of in existence. I did my bachelor's, and I had a very early marriage. I had early kids. So initially when the kids were born, my primary interest was that I had to be at home with the kids. There was no way I was going to do anything while the kids were in their formative years. So after I had my first son, then there was a 2 years gap. I had my second son, and when my second son was actually school going, then when he started going to preschool, the day he was like 3+, the next day I decided that I needed to do something for myself. So that was the time when I started, I enrolled myself in evening classes for my first MBA. And that was also the time pretty much when I started working a little. So initially I used to go to my husband's company, morning till lunchtime I was there. And once the kids came home, so I was home with them. So I completed my first MBA, I think, when my younger son was about maybe 6 or 7 years old. My biggest inspiration, much as I fight with my husband all the time now, but I think my biggest inspiration is my husband. He's actually the rock behind me. He's the one I've had his unstinted support, I have to say, for everything that I've done and everything that I wanted to do. I mean, he has been my pillar of strength. My older son did his MBA, I think 2 years before I did, and then I did it, and then my younger son did it. So I guess I cheated from my older son, and then my younger son cheated from me. I mean, I of course used to look up to my older son because he had done his MBA before I did. So if I was stuck somewhere, I would look up to him for support. I would discuss things with him. But I guess my younger son didn't take a lot of support from me. He probably took his support from his older brother. But I mean, I love doing it. I love doing my MBA in between my kids. Oh my God, it was an unbelievable feeling when I graduated. And when I started doing my MBA also, actually my biggest fear at that time was that when I'm sitting in class, here I'm in my 50s, and the average age for an MBA in the United States is about 27, 28. So I was thinking that here I am 54 years old sitting in class, and the boy next to me is probably 27, 28. His reflexes are much sharper than mine. His pickup is much sharper than mine. So that was my biggest fear, that how will I look sitting in a class like that? But you will not believe, it turned out to be the best 2 years of my life when I was doing my MBA. I felt like one of them. I did not ever feel that I was much older than the rest of my classmates. I mean, I didn't feel like that, but of course I was older. It was hard also for me because my reflexes were definitely slower than their reflexes. And in an MBA, you have a math 540 class, which is actually a very difficult class. And my math wasn't the strongest. So I did have a lot of trouble in that particular class. I used to come back home and I used to study. My husband used to coach me a little in that. And there was a boy with me, a Gujarati boy with me in my class, Indian Gujarati boy. And he was same, the 27, 28-year-old, and he was very sharp in maths. So would you believe it? He used to actually teach me. He used to teach me maths. But it was a wonderful feeling. The day I graduated, again I was, we had a keynote speaker, and he made everybody stand up. Like he said, okay, whose brothers and sisters are graduating today? Please stand up. So there was a big, large crowd of people who stood up. Then they said, okay, whose children are graduating today? The parents stand up. So all the parents stood up. And then they said, okay, anybody whose parents are graduating today? and we were about a handful of people, and our kids were in the audience. So we got the biggest applause, that parents and our children were all in the audience. My both sons were in the audience, my daughter-in-law was in the audience. So it was a beautiful feeling. And I think that day in the evening, it was in Washington where I graduated, and that particular evening my husband had a very big party for me there. We had a graduation party there. Then when we came back to India, again he threw a big party, and during graduation I wore a gold medal because I graduated with high honors. So it was an amazing feeling. Not something that I had dreamt, but I guess it was a dream fulfillment. When I studied in the education system in US, and I also lived there for a few years, somehow my biggest awakening there was that the education system is so beautiful. The resources available to students are so beautiful, and the entire holistic education that you get there, I felt was very, very different from what you get in India. In India, when you go in for a degree or a bachelor's degree, I feel they just put you through a funnel. If you're going in for, say, a subject like commerce, you come out only having learned commerce. But in the education system there, I noticed that the development of the child was so holistic. There were subjects like ethics that were taught to people. There were subjects like psychology, which everybody has to do, which doesn't happen in the Indian system. There are personality development classes. There are leadership skills that are taught to you. And all these things are not taught in the Indian education system. The other thing I felt which was very different, was that in India, the education system, you get it starts at 99% and admissions close at 98%. And I thought that was not fair. What happens to the child who gets 75% or the child who gets 80%? By all standards, that child is a very intelligent child. But in our system of education, that child doesn't get in anywhere. So this was my breakthrough point, and I really thought that this is something I need to bring into my country, that I need to get people who get 75-80% to get into programs of their choice, to get into courses of their choice, to get into universities of their choice, which doesn't happen in India. This happened actually way back in, I think, the early 90s, because that was the time I was actually researching schools for my son. My older son was in the grade 6th, 7th or something, and I was looking for schools for him to study in the US. And at that time there was no internet, so I used to go and spend hours at Haley Road. They have this United States Educational Office there in Haley Road. So I would just go there and sit in the library with books and take out details of universities in the US and what they specialized in. Since my son was to go for an engineering school, I was looking at engineering schools and making notes with their fees and things like that. So I put in a lot of hard work for child number one, and then when the first child went, of course, then the second one had to follow. And somehow I felt, and I went much later. I went for my M.B.A. in like the 2000s. So I did a lot of research then, and that was a time when a lot of people were thinking of sending their children overseas for their education. So I think I pretty much started in 95, 96. I diversified into education. So I stopped the HR work and I started doing this. And then in 2002, actually, I got an opportunity. One of the universities that I was very closely working with, they invited me to USA to set their international student house in order. So I went on an assignment from a US university. I went to Washington and I joined them, and I got into the system there, and I realized that their education system was beautiful, and this was something that I actually wanted to promote in my own country. So that was the time when I actually got into it. Actually, the reason why I was very disturbed was that, I felt that, especially in and around when my own child was supposed to go, I saw his classmates preparing for the IITs, and I've seen children in the 12th grade in India struggle. It is so much stress for the children, these competitive exams, and everybody does not get into the IIT. So this was something which was very disturbing, because I knew a couple of cases where the parents, the child did not get into the IIT or did not get into the college of his choice. So what the parents had said, okay, we'll give him a break year, let him go next year. So next year again the child went through the grind of entrance exams and joint entrance stress, and second year also the child did not get in. So I was noticing that a lot of children were getting frustrated, and there were even cases that I had heard outside where the child was getting suicidal because they could not get into schools of their choice. So this was very disturbing for me. So I started going to schools and I started counseling children कि ठीक है, अगर आपकी यहाँ एडमिशन नहीं होती, एक the child starts feeling very non-competent कि मेरे 75% आ गए, that means I'm good for nothing, which is actually not true. So I used to counsel those students on a social level, and I used to tell them, no, you're very good, I do too, but our country system is such. And then, there was a class of people who had the affordability. So I used to tell those children कि अगर तुम्हारे parents के पास affordability है and you've not been able to get into a school in India, please go abroad and fulfill your dreams. And there are universities overseas which, if you are a very bright child, they give you 100% scholarship. They give you a free ride. And there are so many children who had the competency, did not get into the IIT, but got a full ride scholarship in the US. So in fact, I even had the opportunity to meet the HR minister at one time regarding this only, that our children, 75%ers, 80%ers don't know what to do. They don't get into schools of their choice. They don't get into programs of their choice, which is very frustrating. And the kind of, the kind of academics that a 12th standard student has in India is comparable to the best in the world. I've seen students in 12th standard in the US who know about 20% of what a child who has done his 12th in India knows. Our children, 12th standard students, are so bright. But what do they do if they don't get into colleges here? Admissions in Delhi University this year, it opened at 99% and it closed at 98%. So what do you do? A child who has 95%, or for that matter, a child who has 85%, what does he do? Sit at home? It's very frustrating when you think about it. And think about the parents, think about the children. I'm sorry, it's very disturbing for me to talk on this subject. I'm sure there are a lot of qualified and very professional people in the market. So I would advise every student who's looking for a counselor or a education professional that it's like appointing an architect for your house. आप अपना घर बनवाते हो, you definitely go to 10 different architects and you see which architect is actually the best for you. And this is even more than, it's your child's career which is at stake, and because of your child's career, even your career, your future, like 20 years down the line, where you are going to be is also going to be affected by this decision. So make sure you are choosing the right architect. I would suggest go and visit a few consultants. Don't go to the first one and decide, yeah, मैंने यहाँ से अपने बच्चे का काम कराना है. Visit few people, meet a few architects, and then decide who's the best. Whoever you feel has the capacity, you feel that has the capacity to satisfy your requirements. And there's no set requirements. There's no cookie cutter model which will suit everybody. Something which suits you may not suit me. So go and meet a few consultants, and whoever you feel is giving you the best possible advice, whoever you feel that I can trust my child's future with this particular consultant, use it. I personally feel that women, education is the biggest factor that can empower anything that you need to do. Education is the basis of it all. So our government is also doing a lot for the girl child, Ladki Padhao, and all these things that are coming in. And I feel that women have the power to do anything that they put their heart to. In fact, emotionally we are stronger than men. Even physically now I think women are much stronger than men. So if you have a dream, and you can do it. I mean, there's no such thing that if you have a dream, go for it. You can achieve it. Women are, I think, better achievers than men are. मेरे को लगता है like people like us जो we have reached a stage in our career and we've reached a stage in our life also where it's been a fulfilling experience so far. So now it is the time for people like us to give back to society, because we are not at a stage where we are trying to make a career, and somehow I feel if all of us work on decide that हमने एक किसी को or either a girl child or somebody around you, I'm going to plan the upliftment of at least one person around me, especially education wise. If you have a servant जिसका बच्चा है, girl child है, पढ़ना चाहता है, I do it around my area of work also, कि try and support his education, because I feel education is the most empowering thing for anybody, whether it be a girl or a boy, and especially if it's a girl child and तुम्हारी कोई सर्वेंट है, अगर उसका बच्चा पढ़ना चाहता है तो इट्स अ स्मॉल अमाउंट फॉर अस, उसकी पढ़ाई स्पॉन्सर कर दो. और दूसरी चीज़ मैं अपने बच्चों को भी कहती हूँ, द चिल्ड्रन दैट आई सेंड अब्रॉड, आई जस्ट टेल देम दैट बिकॉज आई बिलीव दैट व्हाट यू गिव कम्स बैक टू यू सम वे. सो उन बच्चों को भी मैं कहती हूँ कि व्हेन यू आर ओवरसीज एंड नेक्स्ट बैच में कोई इंडियन बच्चा आता है, एंड जस्ट हेल्प हिम सेटल डाउन. सो इट्स लाइक अ चेन, इट शुड कंटिन्यू. Every child should help one more child. Every family should support the education of one or two children, whatever you can afford around you. किसी बच्चे की education sponsor कर दो. Because for me education is a primary importance, and I think तुम्हारी अगर elevation होती है society में या anywhere, it is because of your education. So sponsor education, help children educate. अगर आप retired हो, you have the time, आपके servants के बच्चे हैं, उनको ट्यूशन दे दो. All of them are weak in English. All of them are weak in maths. अगर आप उनको थोड़ा सा उनका maths पढ़ा दोगे in your spare time, 2-4 बच्चों को पढ़ाओ, I think it's a chain. It will really make a change in our difference in our society if all of us think this way. Okay, if my story has inspired you, I think my message to you is that if you have a dream, go for it. And dream जो भी रखो, थोड़ी सी challenging ज़रूर रखो, because मेरे लिए भी when I did my M.B.A, I remember it was hard. It wasn't like the easiest thing to do. And my son one day told me, he says कि mom, why are you killing yourself? छोड़ दो, why are you doing it? So I told him that I'm not doing it because मेरे को कोई promotion मिलनी है life में, या मेरा कोई career में कोई progression होनी है. I said I'm doing it for myself. This was something that I wanted to do so much for myself. It was fulfilling an inner desire of mine, which probably started in school 30 years ago, that I wanted to do my higher education from overseas. And the kind of satisfaction that I got when I did it, when I got that degree, was something which gave pleasure to me more than anybody else. And I do know that I have a couple of people who always tell me that you've inspired me. In fact, I have a friend who's probably in her late 40s and she's doing her CA exam. And she was telling me the other day that I was also feeling a little embarrassed that बाकी बच्चे थोड़े छोटे थे and I'm in my 40s. But then she says, I thought कि अगर रेनू ने कर लिया तो I can do it. So she says, you're our inspiration. So I don't know whether what she said is true, but if my story inspired you, and if you have a dream, chase it. If you dream it, only then will you achieve it. So dream it and achieve it. Okay, so let's see what Sonam has been up to so far. Sonam, what have you done? I didn't even look around to see what you were doing. inspired you, and if you have a dream, chase it.